on YouTube? And welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It is Kevin Forte, and today we are taking a look at the Toronto Maple Leafs. We're having some issues with the layover. There we go. Much better. Today we're taking a look at the Toronto Maple Leafs ahead of their game this afternoon. We are going to be doing a live watch party at 2 p.m. Eastern for their matinee matchup on the road in Detroit to start a 4-game road trip. This is a big road trip for the Leafs. They're trying to get right. This is a team right now that is not playing poor. Let me rephrase that. They are playing poor. They're playing poorly compared to the standard that the Maple Leafs and their fans expect. With that said, they haven't gone on that bad losing streak yet. And, you kind of take a look at their record, 8-5-2. They're still third in the Atlantic. And, they did have a 4-game losing streak. So they did have that losing streak earlier. And ever since then, and even a little bit before that, it's been kind of just back and forth, right? Like to start this season, they win 2, then they lose 2. Then they win 3, then they lose 4. Like, there's not enough consistently winning. And I think right now for the Maple Leafs, that is not good enough, right? You want to be considering yourself in the category now of teams like, say, so here's their record so far. I mean, you look at their start, it's not terrible other than that 4-game losing streak, but it's not good enough, right? Like, the expectations in Toronto are to be similar along the lines of teams right now with records like the Rangers or the Golden Knights or the Bruins, right? We expect the Leafs to have that type of record, just pure, utter dominance in the regular season toward the top of their division, but that's not the case. And looking at that season so far, and obviously looking at their road trip, which we're kind of talking about here today, sort of a Midwest road trip, right? You've got Detroit, which that's a 2 p.m. game on this afternoon. 8 o'clock against the Wild on a Sunday. Then they play again. They got a long layover, so they play the Blackhawks at 2 p.m. in a matinee game. And then they play the Penguins to finish off that road trip after Thanksgiving. And that's it. So the way we're kind of looking at the Leafs season right now is this is their get-right road trip. These games are very winnable for the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Red Wings haven't played great. They always play a good game against the Leafs, but they should beat the Red Wings. The Wild have struggled. The Blackhawks have struggled. The Penguins might be the toughest team out of these 4 on this road trip. And they've played a little bit better. But even the Leafs, or even the Penguins, are not that good, right? Then you look at Florida, Seattle, Boston. Now you're starting to talk. You're talking a little bit. The Panthers have been one of the hottest teams in the league. That's going to be a tough game. Seattle's not very good. And obviously we know where the Bruins are. They're sitting at the top of the mountain once again in the Atlantic. Anybody that was hoping they would fall off, at least not yet early this season, the Bruins have been the Boston Bruins. And that's what's really frustrating, I think, for Leafs fans. And rightfully so, right? Like, they lost all that talent. They lost Krejci. They lost Bergeron. And they're still at the top of the division. And it's like for the Leafs, it's like, what the hell is going on? Like, how is this happening? There's already fans that are very rightfully so upset with Ryan Reeves, the way he's played. And that's kind of what happens. This is a guy that just has no skill. I hate to say it. He's skilled. He's skilled at fighting. But in terms of actual hockey and playing the game, he does not mesh well with this team at all. And, the biggest thing I've seen with all the Leafs games I've seen so far this season, the last time I really watched the Leafs was that game against the Lightning, where they ended up ironically winning that game, but it was just one of those things where early in the game you were like, holy crap, Samsonov gets pulled in the first. They gave up 4 goals. Like, it was the end of the world. And then the Leafs came back and were able to find a way to win that game. But when it comes to the playoffs, you're not going to win games like that. You're just not. Or at least very, very rarely. unless you're the Bruins against the Leafs. But I digress. That's not the point today. It's that the Leafs are a team that should be better than they have been. And I hate using the word should because, well, should isn't exactly how the real world works. Things should be a certain way, and that's not usually how it goes. You have to force your will on the world if you're the Leafs. And this Leafs team, a lot like a lot of other Toronto Maple Leafs teams, I'm sure a lot of you will agree with me, there is a lack of that, I'm going to force my will on the world. And maybe that sounds like a stupid cliche, but if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I mean. Sidney Crosby, Nathan MacKinnon, Alexander Ovechkin, Connor McDavid, they will their way. They force their way into the world. Their success is forced because they create the outcome and don't let the outcome fall in their lap. They go out there and get it. And I do worry that there is a little bit of a lack of motivation from some of these guys, like John Tavares, like Austin Matthews. You know, William Nylander's played great, same thing as Matthews, but they just don't have that eye of the tiger, killer instinct competitiveness. They just, at least it doesn't come across that way. And that's something that you can't teach that. You can't teach guys to be like that. They are just that way. And I thought that would change a little bit, bringing in Tyler Bertuzzi and Max Domi, and it sort of changed for a little bit. But for the most part, like, this team is just not there. And the way they play defensively is atrocious. They are one of the worst. They look like a rebuilding team on defense. That is how lackadaisical they are in their own zone. You know, last night or the other night, we did a live stream. We watched the Capitals play the Golden Knights. The Golden Knights were zipping the puck around, boom, 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 crisp pass, crisp pass, crisp pass. But the Capitals kept the Golden Knights to the outside. If a team like the Washington Capitals that nobody expected to make the playoffs this year on a 4-game winning streak, playing really well, if that team can keep the Golden Knights to the outside, why can't a team like the Leafs? Because they don't have that defensive structure. They don't have the defensive capability. I don't know what to call it at this point. And then you also factor on top of that, yeah, you don't have the best goaltending. Yeah, not getting any argument from me there. You know, Joseph Woll has looked pretty good. And that's probably the bright spot for this team right now. But it's Joseph Woll. That's not like a number one elite starting goaltender. The Leafs don't have that. And with their defense that's in front of him, it's hard to make him look like a great goalie with that type of defensive performance in front of him on a nightly basis. In Toronto, with all that stress, all that pressure, it's very hard to develop as a starting goaltender in that environment. And I give him a huge amount of applause because that is really difficult to do with everything he's done already in Toronto. But this team needs to find a way to keep the puck out of the net. That is their biggest issue. And the thing is that's so frustrating is we've seen Leaf teams score a ton of goals. This is nothing new. That's the thing that's so frustrating is we know the script on the Maple Leafs. And the good news is they're at least scoring goals. They are scoring goals. And I think they've just accepted that, well, we know we're going to score a lot of goals. We're always going to be toward the top of the standings in terms of goals for per season. And currently they sit fourth in the National Hockey League. They're scoring the fourth amount of goals so far this year. But their goals against, that type of team is going to win a championship with a goals against in the bottom 10 in the NHL? No. I don't think I'm speaking any kind of crazy language that nobody understands here. I think the Leaf fans completely understand that. What we're looking at with the Leafs right now is a loaded roster once again. William Nylander, Mitch Marner, John Tavares, and of course their one of their captain leaders in Austin Matthews. All four of those guys are in some way or another co-captains, leaders, whatever you want to call them. They are the drivers of this team. And as much as it seems like on paper they're getting things done, in terms of the record, they really aren't. And Leaf fans are still frustrated with the lack of just some of the performances that they play. Even in games they win, they don't look dominant. They don't look like a team that can go win a cup. And here's the good news. We've been very negative on the Leafs here today, so before you guys click out of it, here's the good news. I just said this about the Devils the other day because the Devils have been struggling. Sometimes the best thing is to peak at the right time. We saw with the Devils last season. They stormed out of the gate, right? Other than the first 2 games of the year where they were ready to fire, what's his name? The coach that's still there. Lindy Ruff. They wanted to fire Lindy, right? The first 30 games of the season, the Devils were one of the hottest teams in the league. Well, the rest of the way, they kind of stumbled their way into the playoffs because of that hot start. It just took teams so long to catch the Devils, and they really weren't playing their best hockey in the springtime when they needed to. And you look at the Bruins. The Bruins were dominant all season, and then the final, 3 weeks of the season, right? They just didn't, the cohesion wasn't there like it was all year. Bergeron gets hurt in the final night of the season against the Montreal Canadiens, and they lose in the first round of the playoffs. And that's what I'm talking about. Is sometimes you see the teams like the Columbus Blue Jackets in 2016, where they beat the Lightning, who were coasting pretty much the entire year. They beat them in the first round of the playoffs. And sometimes I think the Leafs fall victim to that too, where they know they're making the playoffs, which is great. They were dominant, but they just weren't hot at the right time. So let's hope that the Leafs aren't fighting for a playoff spot in February, March, and April. But let's hope that they're playing their best hockey in March, going into April. And I think that if you want any sort of silver lining on this, is if this is as bad as it gets for the Leafs this season and they're able to turn things around, maybe they bring in a defenseman, maybe they bring in like a Noah Hanifin or a Nikita Zadorov. Those rumors have been out there. If they're able to do that and they're able to build up this roster a little bit, gain some confidence, the Leafs are going to be there. They're going to be in the mix once again. But I think this is a really nice road trip for them. This is a big road trip for them. On the road, they're going to be together for American Thanksgiving in the States. Find a way to get it done. And I think this is a really, really, really good opportunity for the Leafs to get their season back on track before coming home. Because sometimes, I said this about the Islanders, we know the Islanders have struggled mightily at home. Fans booing to fire the coach and this and that. You know, the Leafs have kind of been dealing with similar things, maybe to a lesser or more extent, but sometimes the best treatment for your team is to go on the road and just have all the outside distraction and noise away from you a little bit. Excuse me. And that might be the best thing here for the Leafs. Go on this 4-game road trip. You're playing teams that are mediocre at best. I mean, other than Boston, when they come home in Florida. But going on this road trip, none of these teams are in a playoff spot right now. Maybe Pittsburgh is. I'm not sure about that. But that's a big game because that's the Dubas Bowl, right? You get to go play Kyle Dubas. I believe that's Black Friday, so that's going to be a really big matchup. That'll be really exciting. And, yeah, like I said, stay tuned later this afternoon. 2 p.m. Eastern, we will be doing a live stream for the first and second period of that hockey game between the Red Wings and the Devils. So if you're the Red Wings and the Leafs, if you guys are interested in joining us for that, make sure to do that. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you again next time. Peace out, guys.